my name's Linda Kelly and I'm at the Dresden branch of the John McIntyre Library, and I was asked to share with you what I know about making masks. Now I won't lie, my first go-to was Pinterest, and I'm going to show you a picture of the mask that I used as my guide, and I know they're going to post this information on the website. It's by Sarahmaker.com, and there'll be a link for you to follow through. And then she posted some really good instructions, and I printed those out, and I watched, there's a link to a video, and I watched the video, and I made 3 or 4 masks, but I have big hands, and so her technique was really hard for me to do. And so I modified the technique so that I find it easier for me to do. Now before we start, I'm going to show you some masks I've made. You can see them laying here on the table, and I've just used up little pieces of fabric that I have at my house. I've got buttons, flowers. I made some child masks, and the dimensions for a child mask are on there. They're a little smaller. And the hot commodity right now is elastic, and it's a little tricky to find, and I'm going to suggest that you do several things to maybe help yourself out. Dig through your own sewing stash and see if you have a little bit. Maybe ask a neighbor who's older now and doesn't sew so much anymore. And if you're really desperate and think you want to make a lot of masks, I suggest you check eBay, because that turns out to be my go-to source for elastic right now. I don't know if Joanne Fabrics has any at their website. I haven't checked in a while. You just are going to have to be resourceful and hunt. Alright, I'm going to actually show you how to build a mask. Now, the instructions that I have and will be posted give the instructions for both an adult size mask and a smaller child size mask. To make an adult size mask, you need a piece of fabric that's 8.5 by 16. For the child size mask, you need a piece of fabric 6.5 by 14. The instructions in this video are quite good, and you may find them easy to use, but if you'll notice, these are the hands of a big basketball player, and so I had trouble manipulating fabric as per the instructions in this video. So I've modified those instructions for me. So the first thing I did learn to do was I turned under, I suppose it's about 1/4, maybe 3/8 of an inch, and press it down, and that helps me get started. Okay, step 2 is to fold this piece in half like this and sew in about 2 inches on each side. Don't measure it, don't fret over it, just approximately. You want to leave a space here in the center, because what you're going to do is, when we're done, you're going to create a pocket. Some people like the idea of adding an additional barrier in their mask. Some people are using a piece of paper towel or a piece of coffee filter. I read where one woman was cutting up an old vacuum cleaner bag to put in her mask because she wanted extra protection. Alright, so you're going to sew in on either end, like I showed you. And then you're going to lay this down and press it open. And then my cameraman here is we're going to stop a minute, and my cameraman's going to come around. I'm going to show you the next step that I do to keep this anchored down, so that these are very washable, and so when you wash it, you don't want this to ravel or fall out or get in your way. So, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. This is probably the hardest part of the whole project, but you'll notice I'm going to line the edge of my presser foot down along the edge of this seam, and I'm going to kind of crawl around down in this big loop and anchor this down so that it stays put if I need to wash my mask. I'm not going to back up or knot it or do anything special. I'm just going to stitch along the edge of that. And you're just going to have to stop every little bit and make sure that your fabric's out of the way. And yes, I've caught several underneath and had to do some ripping, so you're only human when you make mistakes. Don't get discouraged. We're almost to the end, and we're going to stitch. Okay, and then I'm going to raise the presser foot And I'm going to turn this. I'm not going to knot it. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm not going to cut the thread. I'm going to put the presser foot back down and stitch back the way we came. Kind of unroll it as you go. I'll try to keep my hands back so you can see what I'm doing. And that's that. Trim your threads. Maybe. And if your house is like mine, your threads are all on the floor. Okay? Then you're going to turn it right side out. Make sure you get that. And so now you have a tube. I got that turned right side out, and if you'll remember, we have a tube here, and I'm going to lay it down flat, and you'll see that seam up here that we did, and I stitched on either side. This one's fairly straight, but they aren't all, and don't worry about it. The purpose is to keep this seam allowance from inside from crawling out and raveling and making a mess. Okay, press it flat, and then here's one that I've done. I folded it in half, and I press it with my iron, and then I open it up, press it to the center, and press the bottom up to the center. And I hope you can see this, but you should have 3 foldy places in your mask. All right, the next thing to do is to mark it for the pleats. And this is what we're going to do, is actually pleat it, but I will show you how this is done. Now, I'm kind of a lazy stitcher, and after I made a few of these masks, I got tired of fussing around with my ruler, so I found a piece of cardboard, and I cut it 1 inch wide. And so I lay it down right on that fold. Make sure that your seam is at the top. But I've marked, and you can use a regular pencil. This said it's an overhead marking pencil. I have no idea where I got it, but you want to mark 1 inch from the fold and either use a ruler or something. And don't worry, it's going to show because we're going to cover it up. This isn't perfection. This is just function here. Everybody needs a mask. Mark it here and mark it here. So if you'll see, and I hope you can, I have 3 creases and 3 marks. Okay, so the next part is to make the pleats. So you're going to take that part that you pressed and turn it down to the pencil mark, approximately. If it's a little bit less or a little bit more, don't worry about it. And just a reminder, this end is still open. Okay, we're going to close that up. We'll get to that. And then we're going to make another pleat to the pencil line. And we're going to make another pleat to the pencil line. So you've got 3 pleats on either side. And then when you're all done pinning, it will look like, I'll set this one aside, it'll look like this. And you'll see that I have 3 pleats, 3 pins on either side, and that the ends are still open. Now this is where we're going to add our elastic. All right, the next step, of course, is your elastic. Those original instructions suggested that you use 2 pieces of 8-inch elastic. Now, if you have a big head like I do, or if you're making a mask for the man in your life, you probably will want 8 inches of elastic. But the truth is, I find that for most women, 8 inches is too much. The instructions for the child's mask suggest that you use 6 inches of elastic. And I have friends who've decided now that they want their mask to tie. So I think instead of elastic, you could use 2 pieces of ribbon, or if you have some old shoelaces lying around that you aren't using anymore, cut the little plastic end off of one end and insert those. But I think there's just almost anything you could use to make this work. But I've got 2 pieces of elastic. They're just about 7.5 inches long. And then my cameraman is going to come around here behind me and I'm going to show you how I finish this up. Alright, the next step is to attach the elastic to the mask. And you'll remember that we left this end open. Okay, here's where we're going to finish it up. I'm going to tuck the elastic in there, probably about 1/2 inch, just enough to catch it. And then I'm going to put it in the machine very gently, very carefully, and I always drop the needle down through it to kind of hold it while I get settled because I'm clumsy and have big hands. And then I use my seam ripper to help me keep this laying flat as I work. Some people have a thing called a stiletto. You may not need anything, but I like to have something with me. Okay, let's go. Be sure you lock the end so that elastic can't escape. And then we're just going to sew down along the edge of that mask. You've already got one end of the elastic tucked in, and when we get down here to the bottom, I'll show you what we're going to do with the rest of it. Okay, when you get down here, we're going to stop, and I'm going to grab the elastic from the top, and I'm going to tuck it in the bottom about 1/2 inch, a little more, a little less, probably doesn't matter. Be sure you lock that end real good so it can't escape. And then we're going to raise the presser foot. I'm going to turn this around, and I don't do anything fancy. I just put this along the edge of my presser foot over here and then give it a second seam so that it's secure and holds those pleats nice and tight. Don't worry about what color thread you use. It doesn't matter. If we had all known in January that we were going to need masks in May, you might worry about it, but I'd say not now. And then lock the end of that roll well. And pull it out. Trim all your threads. And we have one end done. I'll take the pins out. And as you can see, we have the elastic secured in that one side of our mask. Alright, now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but we're going to go the opposite direction, so you'll have to watch your pleats that you want to get them laying down real flat. I'm going to drop my needle down through there so it holds it, and then we'll lock this in place. And I'm going to get my seam ripper to help hold those pleats down because they want to flip up. And as I see what I do, I just lay that down there and kind of anchor it in place so the needle can catch it. And yes, I've run the needle into the seam ripper before and had to replace the needle, so we're all human and make those kinds of mistakes. Then when we get down to the end, I'm going to reach back through, grab the end of the elastic and tuck it in that open end. That's why we left the side of that completely open. Lock it in place, then we'll turn around and go back the other way so we have a second row of stitching to hold our pleats in place. See how that looks? And again, I'm going to run the edge of the mask right along the edge of my presser foot, lock it in place, and off we go. Sometimes if my fabric's a little bulky, I'll put an extra row of lock right at the pleat. That's kind of up to you. I'll just show you how it can be done in case that's what you want to do. But truthfully, with a little help, I think this is a project your kids could do. And pull that up. Always cut your threads. And we'll take these last 3 pins out. And I always press my pleats nice and flat. Certainly not necessary, and you'll see on this one that it has a pocket, but if you want to add an extra layer of barrier, you certainly can. These masks, if you make them out of cotton fabric, are washable, and you can wash them and reuse them and reuse them and reuse them. So I hope this little video has helped you realize that masks are easy and nothing to be afraid of. And I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you.